This week's Playing the Ball column from Martin Devlin takes a look at the grubby old business of the media, in particular its role in feeding our base desires for tales of sex and scandal. G'day, Martin.
Yeah, g'day. Well, how you doing?
Yeah, pretty good. You think the media should butt out of people's love lives, is that it?
Well, look, I mean, the column is about is it anyone else's business, and I wrote it after this so-called scandal erupted in Argentina with Elton Yanchis, the reserve Springbok first five, and his supposed affair with the team dietitian. Now, they both people have since denied the stories that have been plastered all over the press. Significantly, also, Yanchi's wife has come out and made some comments. Look, I don't really care about any of that. I mean, to me, it's two adults, it's two consenting adults. I mean, what gets me though is simply that question. I mean, it's the business of whose business is it? Just over last week, also we have another story emerging out of America where Ime Udoka, who is the Celtics coach, has supposedly been involved in what's been called an intimate consensual relationship with another staff member. And at the time of filming this, we don't know what his punishment is, but apparently he's going to be stood down and suspended for a year. Now, look, I appreciate that there are employment contract obligations that everyone has, and whether or not that's involved here, and there are stipulations in your contract that you can't actually be involved with anyone that is actually, in the Springbok case, around the team or maybe even works for the organisation or anything like that. But the reality of it is that adults are adults and consenting adults are consenting adults, and what say two people do meet each other and actually really like each other and no one else is involved. The way that it is reported, which offends me the most, is just the lurid nature of the reporting, and some of the headlines about noise making from a rented villa and stuff like that. Well, who cares really? I mean, what are we all doing? Are we all sitting here tittering behind our hands? Are we? And I would love that all of these clickbait editors around the world who just absolutely thrive on these kind of stories. What say the camera gets turned back this way and investigates their personal lives and their professional lives, because to me that's only fair. Because what happens is these stories and headlines get blazoned all over everywhere, and certainly here in New Zealand. I mean, it's an almost gleeful nature in the reporting, and yet when the claims are denied, I have just scoured the news sites to try and find anything about the fact that these people have turned around and said no, it wasn't happening or didn't happen, or proof that it was happening. You really have to dig deep to find any of that. So by my, it's very childish. It's really sensationalist. It's typical of what the mass media is these days. It's just clickbait. But at the same time, I excuse the editors because I read the story, and how many other people read the story? And the reason that they put this stuff up is because us as human beings, we love it. I mean, I start the column by saying we love a sex scandal. We love a good saucy sex scandal, don't we? All of us do. Again, name me a person in the world who hasn't looked across the room at somebody that they work with and think, oh, I quite like you. Whether they say anything about that out loud, whether they make any gesture towards it, it doesn't matter. But you tell me that you haven't done it, and I would say that's your lying face right there.
Yeah, well, you kind of alluded to it there, and you mentioned it in the column, that the chicken and egg situation here, is it a factor of the media sort of feeding this to people who don't necessarily want it, or is it the media giving people the news that they really thrive on? I suppose some of that, the clicks and the clickbait is around that discussion there. Who actually wants this content?
Yeah, look, and I think that's a fair argument. But if that's the case, put your hand up and expose yourself as that kind of news organisation, because you can't purport to be some kind of serious news organisation and then you thrive on this kind of so-called journalism. Look, I've worked in just about every single newsroom in New Zealand, and one of the things that completely astounds me and still does, mate, is that if you look at the top 10 most read, sought-after stories on any news site, no matter where it is in the world, it's not what we'd call serious news. Us people who work in the media who think that what we do is worthy, we need a good dose of reality. What we do is a job, and we might like to think we're good at it, and we might like to give our all to it, but what we do isn't worthy, and it's not worthy by any sense or definition of that word. If you look at the top 10 most read stories, it's all fluff and guff, mate. It's all entertainment stuff. It's all celebrity stuff. It's all just irrelevant. We sit here and we think that, oh, what we do is so important. Is it? But what is really important is I think that people have a right to have privacy in their lives. And, the damage that is done by these blazing headlines about things, as I say, look, I read the stories as well, and my initial reaction is, so what? Who cares? And if they were making loud noises, well, I'm jealous if that's the case. Good on them. A couple of adults enjoying each other's company. Is it a crime? No. No. Is it in breach of, as I said, their employment contracts? Maybe it is. And if that's the case, well, then that's something between them and their employer, isn't it? But what's happened, especially in this South African case, is Yanchis was sent home. He hasn't been re-included in the squad. Whether he makes it again for the World Cup next year, well, it's going to be fascinating to see. And as for the woman involved, that could be the end of her career with the Springboks. And also, she's tainted with that for the rest of her life. Everywhere she goes, some employer's going to Google it and go, "Oh, look, you were involved in that." How fair is that? As I said at the end, whose business is it? It's not mine, it's not yours, it's theirs.
Well, yeah, you've certainly read the riot act there to the media, so we'll take note of it at MBR. Thanks very much for your advice, Martin. Have a good day, mate. Thanks for the call.
I'm sure that we've got nothing to worry about.